Well, I'm really excited to welcome my beautiful friends Brice and Catherine today. We've had a little bit of a break, so it feels like we haven't chatted for a little while. So we're definitely due for due for a catch up, I think. And really excited to see you both in your beautiful matching colours. You look so vibrant.
And I think our telepathy is working well, Medina. I think the telepathy is on call. So when David joins us in a minute, obviously we'll see whether he got the telepathic message.
If he's in orange, we know he's definitely got it.
Yeah, look, he heard that. How's that for timing?
Oh, good. He's coming in. Great. Dave, welcome. Welcome.
Hello, everybody. It's been a long time. I didn't get the memo.
Well, you and Medina match, and Catherine and I match.
Yeah, look, this is perfect.
It's like a northern hemisphere, southern hemisphere. Like
Dave and me are blue, and you girls are
perfect. I thought everyone was going to wear red. Medina's kind of wearing pink, and you guys are wearing red. I was like, shit, I didn't get the memo.
My background is blue, though, Dave, so that's perfect.
Yeah, I'll blend in like a chameleon.
Well, welcome. Wonderful to see you, Dave, as well. We've just convened, so good timing. I'm going to be leading it today and give Catherine a bit of a break so she can answer questions more than asking us all the questions. And today I thought we'd explore Earth, and I've got some exciting things actually to chat about because I did a rating on different countries on the scale of consciousness, and it was quite fascinating, I thought. And I thought maybe we could go through the different countries and just discuss them and explore the results that I found. But first of all, I just thought we'd touch base and say how we all are. So, Brice, how are you going?
You know, in my day-to-day life, I'm good. I have placed the American flag upside down on my Twitter page because a lot of people in the United States are now flying the American flag upside down, which means we're in distress, send help. So I'm hoping, and of course I live in the middle of the city, so I can't really do that outside here, but so I did it on my Twitter page. I'm hoping beyond all hope that is some consent, a conscious consent, because we know that everything works off of consent. And so if the people don't consent, then there's not going to be change. And so I'm hoping that is good news, that we're seeing a lot of Americans, even Americans who aren't fully awake, know that we're in distress right now. And so so keep hanging your American flags upside down, guys. It's not disrespecting the flag at all. It's actually saying we love our country and we need help because we're in distress. So that's actually, I think that's good news for sure.
That's a question actually that I'm going to lead into later, so that's perfect. I'm going to talk about later. So thank you. And Catherine, how are you going?
Well, a bit similar on a personal level, really, really good. I just feel at the moment probably the healthiest and most vibrant I've felt for a long while. You know, all the morning routines, manifesting, supplements, mental thing about where I've been very conscious, where I've been putting my energy in, who I've been surrounded by myself, I feel is really playing dividends for me. Because probably I think last time we spoke, I was having a little bit of a dip in that area because what wasn't in physically I felt well, but in terms of where my attention I was allowing myself to be pulled was a little bit chaotic. So that's really good. And it's interesting what you were saying about that, Brice, because in the UK here at the moment, to all intents and purposes, you would think we were completely back to normal. There are some residues left over in terms of perspex barriers up in front of tills and things like that. There are a few people still with this on, but, you know, travel's completely open. In day-to-day life, it's almost like we're back to normal. However, on a health therapist, with my health therapist hat on, which is why we were just talking before we started recording, David, about how busy we all are. I've never been busier because I am now being very careful the way I say it, seeing a lot of people approach me for support because they haven't been feeling well after this. So I'm rushed off my feet with trying to sort of, you know, help as much as I can with the tools in my toolkit in that. So generally feeling very positive, but with this undercurrent, a bit like you were saying, Brice, of my reality and what other people are going through at the moment. There's quite a mismatch, and that is quite hard to cope with, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Dave, how's Western Australia treating you? I know we've got our election now and it's going bananas with all the election information in Australia. And there's also, interestingly, a parallel election that's for the Constitution that's being talked about as well. So that's interesting. But how are you going in the midst of all this election craziness?
I'm like Catherine and Brice. We're doing really well. Last few weeks have been good. I've been kind of taking a break from everything and kind of haven't done the video in 2 weeks. This is the first video I've done in a while. Wrote a song recently and finished that, and I've started the song, the surprise song, which I shouldn't mention.
I think I know about that.
So, yeah. But yeah, the election. I don't know. I don't even know where to begin because there's some really strange things going on with this election.
I'll say. Did you hear about the mail votes? They've sent in this inordinate mail votes already that couldn't possibly have been a real
thing. They're saying that some people that have had the illness aren't allowed to vote. They're not doing certain things like with the fly-in fly-out workers. They usually have voting on site. They don't have that anymore. There are certain things that the government has to do, and the AEC, which is the Electoral Commission here, have to do prior to the election, which haven't been done.
And you're allowed to phone in now too. They just found out you can call in and vote.
It's so odd. I just don't know. I just don't know what's happening. And
Brice and I like
that's why
you guys are taking what happened in my country and taking it to a whole new level.
Exactly. We just
it's like there isn't going to be one, or they're just going to try and push it through or something. I don't know because it's really strange. I don't know how to explain it because I didn't ever really follow elections until now. Never really knew what had to happen.
It's like the American Idol singing contest that you call in, but except for it's for your life. Like it's for like this is almost funny. Are average people not like this is weird? Are average?
It'd be funny if they probably don't know. That's the thing, you know. It's like everything with this whole saga. Like most people just don't know what's going on.
It's all been
most people are oblivious to the fact that
it's weird. It's
just very strange.
See that something is strange. Like this is not normal. Like
unfortunately not, Brice.
It's almost like we had what we had here in America, and Australia was like, hold my beer. We can do you one better.
Yeah.
Phone it in.
Seems like it.
On a positive note, there are some amazing independent candidates that are now being really inspired to stand up and try to do something, which is fantastic. So there are quite a few of them. In fact, a friend of mine in Queensland is running. So that's really positive. But there's so much shenanigans going on.
Oh, and the other thing is, which you may have heard, Medina, the two major parties are preferencing each other.
I know. That is totally.
Can you believe that?
That's totally wrong.
What's happening?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know if you have that in America, or maybe it's in England the same. So basically, as far as I understand, and they keep changing the rules. So usually there's two voting cards, and one voting card you could just put a number 1 for the one that you want. But now they've changed it where you have to have 1 through to 12 or something for everything. So rather than just putting 1, which negates all the other parties, they're making you put down from top to bottom, which that means if those parties don't get in, they don't get enough votes, then they get preferencing, which goes, their votes go to other parties. And the two majors are preferencing each other.
And they're supposed to be the ones opposing one another.
They're supposed to be, oppositions, but they're preferencing each other.
Calculus equation. Like, what's going
insane.
on?
It shows that they're the same.
You can't make it up.
It shows
absolutely.
Do you think it's quite, in a way, and I wish I should have, for these videos, I want a white hat and a black hat so I can obvious which one I make. But when you look at it from the evil genius point of view, you see with the 2000 mules that's obviously come out, when you make it really complicated like this, do you think it almost makes it impossible to prove fraud, if you see what I mean? The more complicated you make it, the more difficult it will be in hindsight for them to go back and sort of prove where the shenanigans are.
Yeah.
I don't know, it may be, but in 2000 Mules, it was pretty damn obvious what was going on there, wasn't it?
Yeah, but I mean, by you guys putting all these other things in place, because it sounds so ridiculously complicated where you are now and so weird. Like if it's possibly a straightforward, you vote for them or them, then like with the 2000 Mules, it's really obvious where the shenanigans are. But what you both have just described, can you imagine trying to untangle that web after the event?
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's set up in such a way that it almost doesn't matter who you vote for. All the others, the smaller parties, except for the freedom parties, they're all preferencing the majors anyway. So even if you do vote for them, they're not going to get enough votes, and then the votes would just go to the majors. So it's really rigged. It's like if it's not rigged in another way, it's going to be rigged, in a different way. So
well, you're voting.
Do you think they did that? Do you think they did that because of 2000 Mules? Because they know that there is now sufficient. And I've said, like, when I was a kid growing up, we learned in school like what the penalty for treason was, and I know that like here, because Fulton County was a huge subject in the documentary. That's the county I live in, and I live in a really nice area of Atlanta, very upper middle class area, but literally like a couple of blocks over the Peachtree, over the main street, is what we call the Bluff. And the Bluff in Atlanta is one of the most dangerous neighborhoods probably in the United States. I mean, some of the cops won't even go in there. They have their own ecosystem. And I know that a lot of the mules that they paid here in Fulton County came from the Bluff. And so when we're looking at people who are in desperate need of money and also are used to growing up in an economy or an ecosystem where crime is normal, and maybe they don't have the education to know what type of a crime this actually is. This isn't just minor theft. This is technically treason. And in our Constitution, there's only one punishment for treason. I think you guys know what that is. And so they're in the like that hasn't happened in a while, but they used to march them to the county square, and it was an event.
They still do capital punishment in your state?
My state is capital. So in the United States, it's a state-based issue for capital punishment. My state is a capital punishment state. So if you decide to remove somebody against their will from life, we'll say it that way, the M word, then you're looking at potentially facing the death penalty. Now, most states that have capital punishment, it takes a while for that. You have like decades sitting on death row with your appeals. California is actually a capital punishment state, and they take the longest. Like, people usually die on death row of natural causes before they actually meet their maker through the justice system. But I think Texas is the quickest. Most states, I would actually do have capital punishment, but for treason, I would guess, and people can correct me in the comment section if I'm wrong, but I would guess that treason was a federal issue, not a state issue. And federally, because it affects the whole United States. So if there is something that somebody in the state of Georgia, where I live, does against the people of Georgia that affects the whole United States, like an election, then I think it becomes a federal issue at that point, and they have actually sinned against the whole country, not just their state.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think that would be federal. Now, what I would imagine, and I'm not a part of this team, this investigation team, is that the mules are probably going to be, they're the people that are probably going to squeal. And so they're probably going to take capital punishment off the table if they tell on their higher ups. You know what I'm saying? Like, we'll give you a lesser sentence if you tell us who paid you to do this. So I would guess that the little guys are probably not facing the public square. They're probably going to be the ones that they're going to be like, hey, this is what the punishment is for this crime, unless you work with us. But that's saying that if the government does anything. At this point, like, we know that the administration we have right now doesn't give a shit about the Constitution. And so I don't know where it goes from here. I don't know what happens from here. We'll have to wait and see. Are the people just get so pissed off, or the people take it into their own hands and there's a civil war? I don't know. we'll see.
But in Australia, they're doing a parallel election that's being organised based on the Constitution, because as we know, the current voting system is based incorporated. It's based on the corporation. So this is exciting and positive. So we'll see where that goes. Yeah.
Where do you vote with that then? Like, how do you?
There's
how do you vote in that election?
Website. There's a website.
And is it going to be counted as like a real thing?
You call it in?
Like, are they going to ignore it, or like?
Well, I heard whispers that before this actual election happened, there might be the chance that it just doesn't go ahead, because based on the fact that the two major parties are preferencing one another, you are going against the whole Westminster system, which is the basis of what a fair election is, and so then it's null, void, and illegal or illegitimate. So who knows? But
I have to wait and see. We'll find out this weekend.
Yeah. Hold that space. Yeah.
It's a shit show, whatever way it is. It's a shit show by the sounds of it.
100%. Yep.
Good grief.
So what I was
on a separate note.
Yep. Go ahead.
Just before you get into that, there was our fearless. I don't want to call him fearless. Our PM. He was playing soccer with some kids. Did you see that, Medina? He was playing soccer yesterday with some kids at school. There must have been like 10 or 9 or something, and it was soccer. It was, soccer. And he actually tackled this kid, and it was all over this kid. It was really strange, and they caught it on. It was on TV as well, and he was like hugging him and kind of hugging him and stuff. It was really weird.
You should do that in soccer anyway. I mean,
no, you don't have to. No,
that's really weird. Oh,
yeah. He saw
Biden touching that kid, and he was like, "Hold my beer. I'll show you how it's really done, Biden."
Oh, that Biden video! Oh my God.
Oh, yeah.
That's something else, isn't it?
Both similar in that way, aren't they? I had a girl contact me. She had this dream where she actually saw ScoMo's whole life, and he came from these roots where he was part of the MK, I can't say the words, programs, and that sort of occultist type thing, and then there was all a lot of damage done to him in that process, and then he perpetrated that as well, according to this dream that this girl was having, and then she was given really clear instructions this is really interesting, to send him rays of pure divine unconditional love from her heart. And he had some reptilian energy in him, and it transformed into a more of a human sort of energy. And then he was able to receive the love much more. And so, I think this is a great model for where we want to go in the future in the world, where we're not going to just be dumping, blame and anger and hate on people that are doing the wrong thing. But when we come from that space of transmuting that with our own base of unconditional love, I think that's a really powerful model for where we should go. And she described this beautiful dream she had, and I'm going to put it on my channel, but I thought that was amazing.
Can I just say on that note, I listened to last night. I haven't listened to much at all, apart from what you guys do. But I listened to last night, our dear friend Shanti from Aquarius Rising Africa and Aquarius Rising Solutions. She was interviewing Jessie with Mornay, and that was an interview that's on Aquarius Rising Solutions yesterday. And I would really encourage people to listen to that, because it's a beautiful interview with Jessie. I can never pronounce her surname. You can, guys. Zaboda. So it was a really good interview on that, which really fits in with what you were saying, Medina. And it was she was giving some beautiful examples of not only the perspective when you look at what a lot of these people have experienced, but also what sending them love can actually do. So it's just a beautiful interview. It was really, really good.
Yeah. And on that note, I think that really segues beautifully into what I wanted to talk about today, which is the Hawkins scale of consciousness. And it's fascinating. I'm going to bring it up on the screen, but it's fascinating. Do any of you know the Hawkins scale of consciousness? No?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And so fascinatingly, if you hold the frequency, I've just got to become host again to
okay, hang on. We were having problems recording, David. So
all right.
We're all technologically challenged. We all can help each other.
So see if that allows you now, Medina. See if that lets you know.
Sure, no worries at all. So perfect, thank you. So if that, this Hawkins scale of consciousness, can you see that there? If you hold a frequency or vibration of love, which is over here 500, it says that Wayne Dyer describes it as saying, one individual who lives and vibrates to the energy of pure love and reverence for all of life will counterbalance the negativity of 750,000 individuals who calibrate at lower weakening levels. So you can impact 750,000 people by holding this resonance here of love. And here are all the different amounts and the qualities on this scale of consciousness. And what I thought we'd do today is I've analysed different countries, and we can talk about that and what we think in terms of the results. And this is something that I just did myself. So, you can use your own discernment whether it resonates for you. These types of results I find myself have been very accurate actually with these Hawkins scale of consciousness results that I find. And so what I did is I went through the different countries, all of our countries, and to see where they sit on the Hawkins scale of consciousness. And so I can start with, the first one I want to start with is Dave, our beloved country. And what I got was, on the scale of consciousness, I got Australia was now in anger, which is 150.
Wow.
It's very interesting because when I checked it a few months back, it was actually in fear, which was 2 below that, which was 100. So it has actually risen.
Raised a bit.
Positive.
Yeah.
And now it's in anger. And I think, with the election too, people are feeling angry because they're maybe having a bit more awareness or consciousness of what has been actually the impact of all these pandemic regulations and everything that have been happening and what's happened to the country. So it's making them more conscious and more aware. What are your thoughts on that number for Australia, guys?
I think, well, it's obviously fairly low. I mean, you can see why they want to keep us as in a low vibration, because when we're in fear, like we were as a country not so long ago, so much easier to control. Even anger is still very low. I mean, it's like in saying that, love is quite challenging to get to. I don't think I've ever got to 500.
Yes.
But I don't think you need to get to 500 to be on a high vibration either. So it's something to strive for, but it's not terrible if you don't reach it.
That's true.
You can still have a high vibration.
Yeah, they say that the predominant amount of humanity are in 200, which is courage, roughly speaking. So what are your thoughts on Australia being there, Brice and Catherine? Does that?
When I was looking at that I think during the day you could go back as an individual person, you could fluctuate up and down.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I will say the one real positive thing about anger, and this is actually in Mary Magdalene's gospel, the Gospel of Mary, she talks about the wisdom of the wrathful person. So obviously if we take anger and we project the anger out on other people, it's going to create violence. It's not going to be good. But if we can take the anger, settle into it, we can use that anger and turn it into wisdom to create changes without projecting the anger onto somebody else. Does that make sense? So like so if
and using it constructively.
Yes. So if the Australians, if this whole like crazy calculus exam you guys have to take now to like vote, if that's pissing off Australians, it's going to force them collectively, generally speaking, to sit back and say, we have to change this. There has to be a change made. And I think that pushes you into the courage state, right? Yeah. And so when you said you guys were at anger, I was thinking, well, this actually could be a doorway into moving forward. Yeah. Because at least it's not fear anymore.
Because they were in fear.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean,
anything is a step up. Anything that's a step up.
Yeah. Anything's to stay up. And I think a lot for me would be processing it, just hitting what you were saying there, is whether enough people are going to process it rather than just project it. And so it can be a really positive, because we all know suppressing those emotions and suppressing anger will lead to physical disease in the body. And also on a collective scale, if it's not processed, expressed and transmuted into a higher frequency on a collective scale, on an Australia scale, it will lead to more disease. But the fact that you've moved forward and you're moving up and you're moving up through that scale is a really positive thing. And I would agree with what you said, both of you two, that it's great so long as there's enough shift to help people continuing to move through it.
Yeah. Yes.
Because you can easily go back.
You can easily go back. And just an example on that. So someone, a very well-meaning viewer, sent me a couple of things yesterday. Probably got a response he wasn't expecting. So he sent me some videos about the A word that's extracted from little people. And I just got back to him and I said, look, I'm just not watching this. I'm just not watching this. And it was shared on a well-known person's Telegram channel. And they were like, well, they got quite angry and they were sort of saying, well, why? Because, surely we've all got to know this and do it. But by watching this, had put them in a state of fear, of complete hopelessness and everything. And my view back was no, because now I'm a vegan now. Different argument, but I don't need to go and look at slaughterhouses every day now to know what happens to animals. I don't need to see a child being the A word to know what happens. Yes, at some stage you need to have your eyes open to things, but once you know, it's what do you do with that information? What do you move on? So where I see part of our roles and everyone who shares the positivity below is taking the information and not staying there, so not staying in the thing. So yes, of course, if someone's seeing that for the first time, it's going to be a horrific awakening, but to keep watching it once you know it's happened, to me, serves no useful purpose at all. In fact, completely the opposite. It plays into their agenda. So I think, again, fits into what you're seeing there is yes, it's a moving stage, and now all the people that are aware of these things can collectively help anyone and everyone, but it has to start with themselves to move through that.
I think the self-awareness of knowing what your own boundaries are, of what you can deal with, and being really discerning about what you allow yourself to see. I mean, there's some very disturbing information, wherever you want to look there, about what's going on, but we can know about something, but we don't have to be watching it, and just being able to have really clear boundaries for ourselves to protect our own health and well-being. I think that's really, really important, having your own really strong awareness of what you can deal with, what you can't deal with, and just don't get caught up in that if that's something that you're not able to process and integrate.
Yeah, because otherwise, like you were saying, David, it's going to push people back very quickly into that state, so yeah.
Yeah, and just to expand on what Brice said about, going through different stages throughout the different day, that's absolutely a thing. You've got your state of consciousness and you've got your level of consciousness, and the state is more the state they're in most often. So that could be, you might have a vibrational set point of really quite high, but yes, you can go up and down,
Yeah.
But if you have a low vibrational set point, then you're really going to, when you're depressed and you're in a low vibration, you're really depressed. You can't get out of that vibration for the life of you. But when you've got a high vibrational set point and you feel depressed every now and then, by then you've got the consciousness that you can, you have certain tools to be able to pull yourself out of it and go
how to work through it.
Back,
from my own personal healing, whenever I'm triggered or I get depressed over something, it's not something I run from now. I know to sit with it for a minute, where my awareness, because I've worked on my awareness to be able to observe my emotions as not necessarily true permanently. They're just true for that moment, and sit with it and work through, okay, so I'm feeling depressed right now. Why? And so that I can unpack it, which then brings you back up to that. It's like our friend Shanti talks about the alchemy of taking the lead and turning it into gold, which is kind of what the whole wrathful anger is. It's taking the lead and turning it into gold. And I agree with you. I don't watch anything having to do with the A anymore, because why? It happened. It's still happening. And if we focus on it, we're going to stay down in that low level of like, Shanti also talks about our responsibility is now moving our vibration up, working on ourselves so that we're above these dark players. So they're kind of swinging at dead air, and that's how the dominoes start to kind of, it's like your beautiful analogy, Catherine, when you talk about the tuning forks. When one tuning fork is vibrating at a certain level, this one will automatically be pulled up to it. There's a reason why in this life, I'm not on the team of people that's dealing face to face with the little people and there's a reason why I'm not on that team. And I think I can't handle it. I won't be able to handle it. God knows what God's doing, right? Creator knows what he's doing. And the people that are dealing with it, they are equipped to deal with it. And so our job is just to help each other get to the next step.
I think at the highest levels too, we incarnate on earth because we are going through a mastery process of learning how to transmute the shadow aspects and the darkness. Otherwise we would have just gone to a beautiful planet of, unicorns and butterflies and we'd be there experiencing love. But we've come to a 3D planet where there's a lot of shadow stuff, there's a lot of dark stuff. And this is part of our lesson of mastery, of being able to be aware of that and interact with it, but then be able to transmute it into light, and that's one of the whole cruxes of purposes of why we're here. And it's masters that have been chosen to do this work. So everyone watching is a master. We're all masters, or we wouldn't have this incredible opportunity to be able to come in and transmute that darkness.
I still think my soul made a wrong turn. I think my GPS got lost when it was coming to Earth. I think I was supposed to go to Venus and I just got lost.
I want to go there too.
I think my soul made a wrong turn. I got lost in the cosmos.
In all seriousness, I've had this conversation with people. I know we're jesting, and I know this is a jest, sort of, but it brings up a really important point for me to be careful what we wish for. So one of the things, like I talk a lot to people about wanting a tail and things. It's like, well, be careful you're not wishing this life away to come back as a cat next time. And I know that was a joke, lady, sort of thing, sort of, because we would all like to be on Venus, we think. But equally, it brings up quite an important point, I think, coming back to your scale of consciousness in terms of really seeing the gratitude and living in the now. Because so much of the last 2 years, and I completely get why, for people that are involved in conversations that we've been involved in, has been like, when this happens, when that happens. And isn't that exactly what we're trying to get out of that behaviour? Right here now, what can we take from the right here now? Because I was with, over the last couple of weeks, I've had a lovely opportunity to meet a lot of people who are very similar minded to all of us in person, which has just been wonderful and really uplifting. But there's still a very dominant theme of when Jasara and Nasara happens, when this happens, when that person's out of whack. It's still conditional happiness or moving forward with their lives based on something outside of their control happening in the future.
That's a really good point you bring up. And I'll say my sister, when my sister has 3 children, and when her oldest was born, the first grandchild, the first baby, my sister would say, oh, I can't wait until he can walk. I can't wait until he starts to talk. And somebody corrected my sister and say, no, don't say it that way, because you're going to miss this moment. You can say, I'm looking forward to when he does this, but don't miss this moment because you're so excited about the next step. And there's also, I listened to somebody talk about this once, about this idea, how people say like, oh, I'll start my diet tomorrow, or I'll do this tomorrow. When we think about the future, it's disassociation from where we are now. So it is a form of escapism. And I'm not saying that we can't be a little aware of the future and kind of thinking about it, but we also have to be here in the present moment now, because now is what gets us to tomorrow. Now is what makes that step towards the next day. It's the power of the here and now. So you can think about the future and what you're looking forward to, not that, when I look forward to the day when Nasara comes, but right now, this is what I'm doing now in this here now moment. Does that make sense?
Massively so.
I think
what they say, tomorrow never comes.
Yeah. Sorry. I think the problem that humans have is that they have the human condition is that they can't be in joy, or they can't be in appreciation, or that's a frequency that they're finding really hard to be able to sustain. And so therefore they try to escape the moment and not be in the moment. But I think it boils down to the fact that people perhaps aren't familiar with being in true joy or true bliss or true peace, and so they can't hold that frequency. They don't know how to because they haven't done it before. So I think part of that is practicing the ability to hold these higher frequencies and maintain them, and particularly if you haven't done that before and maybe you've had a really difficult life and you haven't had that experience. I think that's what we're wanting to really practice.
It's all just a mind program, really. I mean, can you imagine what it would have been like if they just programmed us with love all throughout school and on the TV? Like, we'd be living in a completely different world.
We'd be Care Bears. We'd just be walking around like Care Bears, shooting out praise from our chest.
And it would be subconscious, so you wouldn't even need to,
Yeah.
I think that is so important, because we've all said individually in our own different ways that we throughout this journey, we've evolved away, been very cautious about what we listen to, who we surround ourselves with, where we're putting our energy. And a real practical example for me is my daughter and I have decided, she's such an inspiration, and we've decided we're going to learn a new skill. So we've started a kickboxing class, a boxing and kickboxing. Oh, such good fun. Because when I'm doing it, I'm imagining who that face is on my leg. And it's just amazing. But you know what really occurred to me this week? As I was really loving it, I've never done it before. And obviously at my age starting, it's quite hysterical, but it's really, really good fun. And in the room that we do it in, it's in like a marquee, there's no clock. And obviously you can't wear a watch, and you've got your boxing gloves on and everything. And what I realised is it was so wonderful. I realised how little of my life I don't have a clock on me. So my husband, we were joking, Brice, about, he doesn't ever get affected by Mercury retrograde because he just doesn't pay any attention to it. So nothing ever happens to him during Mercury retrograde. But interesting, he never wears a watch either. And in this class, I enjoyed it so much, and it went so quickly, and I was completely present. But I know for myself, had there been a clock on the wall, and when I was getting really tired and doing this, I'd have been looking at this thinking, only half an hour left, or only this, because it's really hard work. And I was like, Eureka, take the clock out.
Yeah.
Take the clock out.
I don't wear a watch at all. And I noticed that you intuitively actually know a lot of the time what the time is anyway, because you get used to sort of tuning into the rhythms and everything. And you can actually quite accurately often intuitively know what the time is without having a watch. So, and it can interfere electromagnetically to a watch with your system. So you've got to watch that as well. No pun intended. Anyway, shall we move on to the next country? So I thought what we'd do next was the USA, Brice. And what I found was that on the scale of consciousness, the USA was in Pride, 175, which is the next one up from Australia, anger.
That makes sense, for sure. I think that there is a lot of, the way I see pride can be both a bad thing and a good thing at the same time. Like, there's a healthy pride, and then there's a ego-based pride. Like, I think we teach children to have pride in their hard work, be proud of yourself if you've worked hard at something, and I know that, it's interesting here in the United States, because I think that for a long time, especially with Mr. T, the United States was kind of center stage, for a lot of what was happening because of who our president was at the time. And it's interesting because I follow a lot of, we'll say, truth activists, not necessarily truthers like us. They don't get into like the topics we get into, but there's a group of people like Herschel Walker, his son Christian Walker, DC Drano, who has I follow them, and they're not talking about anything that we talk about. Like, they're not talking about they're not talking about is the earth flat. They're not getting into, they're just literally focusing on tangible information for political purposes that the average person is going to understand. Do they know about that stuff? I don't know. They don't focus on it. And so, but what they really focus on a lot is the founding of this. We're seeing this like resurgence of the American pride. And I think for a lot of my existence, people are like, oh, there was, and I've heard this before. There was a whistleblower named Swally back in like the late 90s, early 2000s, where they talked about within the controller group, the bad guy club, how America was going to be the hardest country to tame because of what the Constitution and what happened to form this country. Whether that history is correct or not, I don't know. But when I was a child, my parents taught us to have pride in the fact that we were American, that our ancestors were 17-year-old kids who picked up these things and went up against the biggest monarch in the world because they were sick of it and they wanted to govern themselves, and to have pride in that we were a country, as the military back channel said, patriots have no skin color. What is an American? American is every race under the sun, every nationality coming together in one melting pot, as they say, is one culture. And so you are seeing this resurgence of American pride. Now, when I was growing up, we were called the dumb Americans. But the Swally said that was a psyop to start to lessen the vibration of America so they could swoop in and easily take America under its thumb, because America, according to Swally, was the wild, wild west for this group of controllers. And so I think that sums it up. I think people are starting to feel that pride in who they are as an American again, in our history. And that's why they're hanging their flags upside down. Mm-hmm. Basically, it's a statement to say, we see, whether or not you're where we are in understanding the bigger picture, or you're just an average American who doesn't want communism, that sees what's happening with this administration, that knows there was, we'll say, shenanigans in the competition, which is dangerous for any, because it's like when you're dating someone, if they'll cheat with you, they'll cheat on you. And so even people who were in support of Mr. B are now hanging their flag upside down because they see the reality of the situation, that this is now a banana republic, and so, yeah, that makes sense with the pride. And I think that it like anger, it's the same as anger. If it's done in a healthy way, it can be really helpful and really good. But if it's done in an egotistical way, it can be dangerous. But I think for the people, from what I'm seeing, it's the healthy pride. For the controllers here in America, it's the nasty ego pride.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Perfect. Well, good summary. That's great.
So I would also say, sort of adding to that, sorry, would you just go
ahead, Catherine?
Just saying, what I'm really hoping, leading back to our previous conversation, is people are having pride about who they are now. Because yes, the past is important, but we all know that most of our history is made up and what we've been told. So I've always known as a British person that what I learned in history about the First and Second World War will bear no resemblance to what a German person learns in history about the First and Second World War. Just as a classic example. And the same goes for what we learn in the UK about the American Revolution and what you guys learn. And what I'm coming to the realization myself is, yes, it's so important to inform ourselves on this. And as like you were saying then, Brice, take the good bits of it, but also sort of say, and this is where we are now, and this is what we've got now. And isn't that bloody amazing? Because when you look at what some people are doing, it's just incredible on so many different levels.
Like my friends and I were laughing the other day. I'm at this point, like when these things first came out, we just wanted to slide under the radar, just be left alone. Now, I don't want people to think I've gotten this. I want people to know that I haven't, because I take pride in the fact that we have survived, all four of us and our people watching, we have survived. I'll be careful how I say this, the biggest constructed lie
ever
that has ever on Earth.
Unless it's happened once before that we didn't know about.
With Atlantis, probably. But yeah, but we've all survived that. And so I think people that see the truth, that have not succumbed, there's a pride in the fact that I'm strong. I have courage. It's taken courage to get to this point for a lot of us, especially for those that live in really hard states. Like I'm a little bit easier here in Georgia. I'll admit that it's been easier for me in Georgia than someone in New York or California. But the fact that you've stood strong knowing you could lose everything,
And I think, Dave, that resonates for us in Australia. You know, we're a smaller country, there's less population, and so you do actually feel there's a certain nefariousness of what's going on, that you feel more deeply, because I think a bigger country you can feel more protected, you know what I mean? So we're more exposed, we sort of feel more vulnerable in a sense, because we are an island, and you know, we I don't know, I just feel it more. How do you feel about that, Dave?
Well, I still think there's far less people that have got it than they say, because I've seen different things from the CDC actually brought out something talking about the US, and Catherine, I sent you something about the UK. Don't know if it's true, but it would make sense that at least some of it's true. You know, I don't think it's definitely not as high as they're saying. So, on some level, I agree with you. But I also think there's far more people that haven't got it than they're saying. So,
with pride, though, if we look at the idea of being proud, have you noticed like how each other's countries, like, I'm proud of you guys in Australia, I'm proud of the people in England, I'm proud of the people in France, I'm proud of the people in Germany, so forth, who are like me, who are standing up and saying no. And so you're seeing this pride ripple through not just in our individual countries, but for other countries as well, that we are proud of our fellow humans that are in the same boat we're in, and we're cheering each other on. And it makes me like emotional when I think about it, you know, like that as humans, for the first, you know, they've done this puppet show, the controllers have done this puppet show where throughout what we understand as history, which we know that might not be correct, that they've targeted country against country, country against country. But we're starting to see now, it was never country against country. It was never us against us.
So they've actually unified people around the world through this whole process, because now we're starting to feel one another around the world even more, and what we're going through, and that brings us closer together. So that's a beautiful thing.
I think that's such an important point. And I think also what we're seeing is countries' individual personalities coming out and realizing, I always go back to the football team analogy because it's the way my simple brain works, but that you need all these different bits, the jigsaw puzzle. So for the UK, we were one of the first ones globally to have the massive protests, and they were massive. Okay, they weren't reported. And then you've had the tracker strikes, and then you're in Australia, you've had different things. In America, you've had different things. So altogether, they've all been absolutely essential parts of the jigsaw puzzle. Yeah. And the fact that people can express themselves in different ways based on their individual circumstances, what's available for them, and things like this is absolutely fine, because there's loads of different ways to get the job done, and we don't all have to be the same. So what I find hysterical is I find actually that we've all been fighting against or raising awareness against the globalist agenda, but what we've done is not us, what humans have done is we've created a completely different version of the global agenda based on peace, harmony, collectiveness, taking our power back. So when I look at globalism now, I can see the two sides of the toy. I can see their globalism and our globalism, their reset and our reset. And for me, it's no different to talking about YouTube or Facebook or Instagram or your mobile phone. Everything can be a good or bad. It's how you use it, not the thing in itself.
And everyone has their own individual reality that they create through their perception. So everyone has a different sort of timeline or reality that is going to be their own personal version, and that can extrapolate to all the billions of people in the world. And so if we all hop on that timeline of that higher perspective, then we're going to be doing well. So Catherine, I'm going to get to your country, which is of course the UK, and that's courage at 200. What do you think about that, Catherine?
I think that sums up what we started with, the conversation, when you said, how am I feeling, back in the UK. And our national symbol is the lion. That's that's on all our sports team, is the English lion. Sorry, Scots and Wales. But we've got a lion, a dragon. God, I can't remember what Scotland. I'll look it up quickly in a minute. Sorry, Scotland and Ireland.
A griffin or something, isn't it?
Pardon?
Is it a griffin or something?
Something like that. But I just really feel the courage. I really do, and I think it's really accurate. I think there's been a lot of courage, a lot of different ways, and people have expressed their courage at an individual level very differently. And I certainly have grown of a lot of appreciation for the different ways and the way people have expressed it. So going back to what we were talking about earlier, so taking about whether it's this or the masks or compliance, whatever. So some people like me, I said no, and I was quite happy to be the only one in the supermarket. I wasn't saying it would be comfortable, but I was going to do it. And other people have done it in a much more subtle ways. And what I've learned over the last couple of years is there are loads of different ways to express courage. And that's really important. You know, courage doesn't necessarily mean being the first one on the battlefield and taking the arrow for everyone else, because some people can do that, but then you're game over. There's also more subtle, slower moving forms of courage that you need the foot shoulders to be moving along behind as well. And I've got a real appreciation for that, but it definitely feels right to me. I
feel that they all resonate.
There's the Janis Joplin song that I get stuck in my head a lot, Bobby McGee, freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose. And I think that for a lot of people, especially, you know, we're suffering from such high inflation now, we've realized, I think, that we have nothing left to lose. We have, like, the alternative to what we're fighting for is not something we want. And so a lot of people are finding that courage, because freedom is having nothing left to lose. And so they're celebrating, even in times of lockdown, and where there is that courage and freedom that's coming out of that as well, because you can only you can only whip a horse so much before the horse kicks you off. I mean, you know that, Catherine, like, you can only do so much before somebody, a living being, pushes you off.
I've got to say,
when you get that horse,
so true. I mean, I've got to say this quote, because it's exactly what you're talking about, Brice. It's like they say the median annual pay during the Great Depression was 22% of the cost of an average home. Today it's 14%. So that means that the pay relative to home cost made it easier to buy a home during the Great Depression than right now. Can you believe that?
Oh yeah,
that's actually kind of comforting in a way, because you know, the Great Depression was obviously such a terrible time, and here we are now in a worse position. And could it get worse? Maybe. But the other thing is once we hit that point, it can only get better. So you know,
it's just another word for nothing left to lose.
And I think it's forcing so many behaviors. I mean, have I seen the vast majority of people? I don't know, because obviously I have quite a sheltered circle in terms of where I live and who I choose to interact with at the moment, and who chooses to interact with me, because there's plenty of people that don't want to interact with me at the moment. But in our personal family, I have never been prouder of my family. All completely different personalities, all expressing, and what I've seen, if I just take my children, what they've achieved individually in completely different environments and ways over this last 2 years, I'm just blown off the scale. And and I've seen loads of other events. You know, I went to this event at the weekend, I met some brilliant people in person. And when I heard there was one lady whose daughter's best friend had been killed in one of the false flag operations over in the UK, the Manchester bombing. And when I heard her story and what they've done with it as a family, and how turning a tragedy into something so empowering to change their lives, are just mind-blowing. So yeah, what you said, David, I think, yes, if there are tough times to come, my attitude is bring it on, because there's something about human nature, whether we like it or not, that we don't see in other aspects of the animal kingdom, in my experience, a lot of the time, where sometimes, because we've been led into this lifestyle of being so comfortable, it doesn't serve us. So the American dream, take the thing, what you guys did as a nation is so phenomenal and so unique, but what you've done with it as a nation, I'll probably offend loads of people here, to have the highest obesity levels in the world, to have the worst levels of health in the developed nation, to have the lowest standard of education and the lowest things. So sometimes, and I've heard loads of really good people, Wim Hof, I heard speak brilliantly about this, is when we have it too easy, it doesn't serve us. You talk about this all the time, Brice, about the friction, about the challenges. And in nature, there's a reason why we have cold, harsh winters that get rid of the heat.
I tell that to my students all the time too. I always say, like, as Westerners, we have a really warped perception of life because we think that we have to be comfortable all the time, and that's not true at all. And the reason why the American settlers, if that's true, that's a whole different story, were able to do something so quickly and so fast is because they weren't comfortable, because they were pissed off. I mean, even half of the white people in this nation were brought here against their will, because they were, I mean, Georgia was a penal colony for people who were debtors, and so they were brought here against their will. You know, they were, as far as like even the white people, they were dealing with elements. We had malaria down here in the South that they weren't used to coming from Northern Europe, that they had to quickly adapt to, and that was that friction. And then being taxed crazy from a monarch that we weren't even, you know, what was the famous quote, taxation without representation is tyranny. So we didn't have somebody representing us, and so we declared independence. And so that friction had to happen. And then all of a sudden, it got, well, it also came in with the Federal Reserve too, where they started mandating, that's when they started really controlling the lives of Americans. Because I don't know if people even realize that the Federal Reserve controls the education system as well. It's not just money. They're controlling your education system. They're controlling everything.
Well, it's all the same people, isn't it? So.
Yeah, all the same people. And all of our food is fake now. We don't even have real food. Yeah. Our ancestors had real food.
Yeah.
I went through I had a lovely client last night, really amazingly well educated in all areas. I don't mean traditional education, I mean in life and everything, and holistic therapies. And when we went through what her horses were being fed, it was horrendous, her jaw dropped, because it's all genetically modified soy, it's all this, it's all that. So you're so right about that. It's like we've been completely, you know, gone so off scale as a race. We did need, again, not their great reset, we needed our great reset.
Our ancestors knew how to farm. All of our ancestors. Our ancestors, regardless of where you're from in the world, they knew how to work the land.
Oh, absolutely.
Regardless of where you're from in the world, your ancestors knew how to work the land. They knew how to make bread.
You had to sew clothes and
yes.
Look at most of our parents. I mean, if you see my sewing, it's not pretty, but it's functional. But you're so right. And look at community, Medina. So when you look at some of the poorest communities in the world, look at how they support each other generationally. You know, being able to afford to put your elderly relatives in a care home is not great. It's not, you know, for men. Now, don't get me wrong. I know there's some horrific dementia diseases and things that can make it really, really hard for people. So I'm not talking about every occasion is wrong. I'm just talking as a general case. So much of when we have more, it can make it harder for people to make good choices. I might be wrong, but I personally don't believe that a lot of people that have gone away since they've got rich and famous, I don't necessarily believe as babies they have bad souls at all.
No.
I just believe that the temptations and the direction and the traps of things are so challenging. Well, sometimes
it'd be a gradual process, right? You know, it's like they do something small, then they do something even bigger, and then they keep going. It's just like anything in life, you know. You let it slide once, you let it slide twice, you know.
Is there a person that we know that hasn't got some lie that they've not told us about?
I went to Vanuatu a few years ago, and oh my God, the smiles on the children and the people, that they were so radiant. and so full of joy and love and happiness. And, you know, they live very simple lives there. They don't have a lot of stuff. And just the pure, joyful emotion that shone through them was incredible. And that's just a classic example. I know other people that talk about going to Africa and even Vietnam. I had a girlfriend that went there, and she was giving the children pencils and things for their educational purposes, because they didn't have those things. But she said that their smiles were so beautiful, and they were just pure, you know, joy, a lot of them. And that can sometimes be blocked when you've got too much stuff and too many material possessions. I wanted to share with you one other really, really interesting finding I found with the scale of consciousness, which was, I think, relevant, is New Zealand. And, you know, we know what the Prime Minister is like over there, J.A., I won't say her name, but the numbers that came up for New Zealand were 100, fear. And I thought that's really interesting as well, because considering everything that's going on there. And I think it's helpful for people to know, because when they're aware of these sorts of things, if you know it resonates with you as truth, then you can do something about it. You can take action.
What do you guys think that the scale would have been for different countries before the last 2 years?
Oblivious. Is that one?
Is there an apathy one? Is apathy on there, Tina?
Apathy is one, but apathy is a bit higher, isn't it?
Is it?
Well, I think I saw neutrality, and I think for you know, just, I mean, we all have different reality as perception, right? And so we all are really seeing the world pretty much how we were raised as children. I don't think that's always the kind of our cornerstone for how we see things. And
apathy, it's really low.
Yeah, I would say a lot of people were in neutrality, because it was kind of like, oh, what's happening in that country is none of my business, or what's, you know, because we were just.
No, I think it would have been way lower. I think it would have been far lower, because neutrality is actually quite high. You know, it's not necessarily.
I think it dropped. I think what happened was when everything started to get exposed, it went down to shame, guilt.
Possible.
I know a lot of people who feel ashamed because they.
I do too.
I know people who voted for.
They were pressured and they were pushed into it. And then when they had it and they started getting reactions from it, they created a sort of like a self-hatred or
they were conned. They have to admit to themselves that they were fooled.
Yeah, and what's that quote? It's easier to fool someone than convince them they've been fooled.
And the other, it's like on periods of shame quite a lot in this, because like going back to what you, David and Brice were saying, doing an individual day, because, you know, we're learning all the time, and I'm, as you know, quite outspoken, and hopefully I'm still learning how to communicate things in a better and be with more compassion, but still effectiveness. And I can think back to conversations I've had over the last 2 years where I haven't spoken to people compassionate about something because I've been so desperately trying to get a message across that it probably wasn't done with much compassion, you know. So I think on all of us, regardless of what we've been through, certainly I can think of times when I'm not proud of how I've, you know.
Well, that's
you get very heated, don't you? You're so passionate about it. You get very, you know, kind of angry sometimes. And it's a difference, you know.
That's the spiritual evolution. You have to, like, when you walk. And I think that's one thing about this whole situation. We know that this is all very spiritual. It's all very your own moral compass, your own spiritual growth, the macro and the micro. But like, again, in Mary Magdalene's gospel, who I think is like the best gospel ever written, she kind of alludes to that, you know, you're living your life. And then when you start to, like, you're in that neutrality, and then when you start to go down that path, you have to descend first. You have to descend. You don't just go whoop, you have to actually go back down again into fear, anger, the grossness. That's why cheesy 100%. As it is, that's why in yoga the lotus flower is a sign, because lotus flower grows on gunk. It grows on crap. It has to come through the mud and the muck to bloom. And so I think that as collectively we had to drop down into oh shit, and then get angry and then kind of waver here a little bit until we can then just pass neutrality into compassion, love.
The whole world's doing a dark night of the soul, so it makes absolute sense.
cognitive dissonance is another thing that comes up, which is when people just shut down and don't see anything, because I'm seeing that. Very interestingly, Dr. Peter McCulloch, I think I can say his name, he was talking about how many of the families, when they have a member of the family that passes from this, will go into complete and utter cognitive dissonance, and they will not be able to see on any level that it had any connection whatsoever. And this is incredibly widespread with so many families where this has happened. So that's another aspect as well that comes up very clearly, which is that cognitive dissonance that happens when people just don't want to see, what's before their eyes.
Yeah. Going back to the scales, so one of the things I've been doing a lot for the last 10 years is looking at the link between the physical body, the emotional body, and the spiritual body, and how they link together. And I know all of us are very involved in that. But it makes complete sense, because when you look at the lower vibrational things, the things like guilt and shame, when you're at a lower vibration energetically on that emotional scale, equally at a cellular level, your body doesn't have the energy to deal with anything else that's coming at it. So sometimes, even though people aren't consciously aware they're in the guilt and shame, because they might have, for example, there are situations where people have encouraged people to have that, and then something has happened, the burden of that is so huge. And then when you're energetically, emotionally at that low vibration, that is mirrored also by your physical body. And if you've that low energy, you haven't got the resources to get yourself out of it, which is why for me, it's always so important that we work on our physical bodies, our emotional bodies, and our spiritual bodies all together, because they're all going tuning forks. They're all bringing
body,
each
mind,
other
and soul.
Yeah. Colour when you said that, Catherine. It was really interesting.
I know all that.
Lovely.
But yeah, I think when you look at that scale, I've really, really helpful today, Medina. Thank you so much for doing that, because it just puts so many different things in perspective. But I think it's so helpful, because the thing is, we're all going through on an individual and a country level this and different things. And like you were both saying earlier, we're all bringing each other up. We're all wanting to help each other. We all want to help everyone in New Zealand as much as we want to help anyone in our own countries. We feel that unity, probably more than I've ever felt it in my life before.
That's true. Big hug to all our human family out there. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, guys. That was brilliant. I think there were so many fantastic areas that we covered, and that scale of consciousness is a great one for people at home if they want to print it off and work with it. It's fantastic. I work with it with clients as well, and it's great. So do we have any last things we want to share before we finish today? Just on a goodbye note. So Dave, anything you'd like to share?
Yeah, I think this really just highlights how important it is for everybody to raise their vibration, really. I mean, if you just wanted to do one thing, raising your vibration would be the thing. And just because every time you raise your vibration, someone else around you theirs will raise too as a function of that. And that's just a massive flow-on effect. So that really is it. If everybody was operating, and I think we'll get there. It seems to be like we're moving that trajectory now.
Yes.
But and it may take some. It's gonna take some time. But I know from personal experience, when I was had a point where I went from one to another, to get to the next level, I had to drop all the way back down, and then go again. So it's like, yeah, it's very funny how it works, but it does work, and I think that's the main thing.
Fantastic.
Not linear. It's not linear.
No, it's not.
Don't pick yourself up if it's linear.
It's not like you're just gonna go zing.
Whoop. No,
there's no judgment with it. It's just is what it is.
Like that slidey slide at McDonald's that goes like this. Like, well, I will share. I posted this on my Twitter. I read this the other day and I penned it and I thought that's good. So I said, plot twist of the day: when nothing is certain, everything is possible. And I said, some of your best days haven't even happened yet. Because nothing is certain, everything is possible.
Beautiful. I love that.
And I just want to say a massive thank you to anyone who takes the time to watch this, because for me personally, a lot of my growth has happened over the last years by being able to speak to wonderful people like you guys. And we wouldn't be doing this if people didn't bother to watch our videos. We wouldn't be doing it in the same ways. And for me personally, it's expanded my consciousness, hopefully helped develop some of my skills in communicating a bit better and things like this. And so this is what I mean about every single person's got a bit of the jigsaw puzzle. Every listener is just as important as every participant, because neither would be there without the other one. So thank you very much to you three I love our conversations so much. I really, really, really love them. But really equally thank you for anyone who takes the time to watch or comment and participate, because this is a team effort.
Absolutely. That's so true. And I just want to finish off with the quote and just mention to you, I've set up a beautiful new Patreon community, because I'm all about bringing people together in community. And if anyone would like to go there, it's got some beautiful things we're offering, like meditations and different things. So the quote here is by Thich Nhat Hanh. You'll know him, Brice, I think, the Vietnamese master. He says, an entire sea of water can't sink a ship unless it gets inside the ship. Similarly, the negativity of the world can't put you down unless you allow it to get inside you. So I thought that was a good one to finish with. So thank you, everyone. That was beautiful. Thank you. Lots of love to you all, and lots of love to everyone listening, all the viewers. Love to you all. Thank you.